I want you to imagine just for a second that you're looking out your window right now.
Mm-hmm.
Like you see a bird landing on a branch, maybe a flower blooming in a pot on a balcony, or even a fox darting across a field in the distance if you're out in the country.
Right.
It is incredibly tempting, I think, to view the natural world as this beautifully illustrated catalog,
Oh, absolutely.
like a collection of totally separate, disconnected items. The bird is over here, the flower is over there, a fish is in the river, and they're all just kind of living their own isolated lives.
Yeah, that's just how we categorize things.
Right. But what if I told you that that catalog is a complete illusion?
Really is.
Today's deep dive is basically about destroying that myth of the individual animal or plant. We are looking at sources that reveal the invisible, highly volatile machinery that actually runs the natural world.
Yeah, and that catalog view, it's how humans naturally organize information. We point at things, we name them, we categorize them into neat little boxes. But the source material we're digging into today argues that this instinct actually blinds us to reality. When you look at a forest and just see, trees and deer, you are missing the most critical part of the entire picture.
The invisible web.
Exactly. The invisible web of dependencies that dictates whether that forest actually thrives or just collapses into dirt.
And untangling that web is our mission for this deep dive. We're going to look under the hood of ecosystems to understand not just what they are, but the physical mechanics of how they operate.
And how they fail, honestly.
Right, how they fail, and why a single missing piece can reshape an entire landscape. And don't worry, you don't need any science background for this. We're breaking it all down.
We've got you covered.
So let's jump straight into dismantling this illusion.
Yeah.
To do that, the text insists we have to fundamentally redefine what a natural space even is, starting with the word ecosystem.
Yeah, ecosystem. It's a term thrown around in everything from a high school biology class to corporate boardroom. But biologically, an ecosystem is a specific functioning community. It's the combination of all the living things in a particular area.
So plants, animals?
Right. Plants, animals, fungi, the microscopic bacteria, all of that. But it's that combined with their non-living physical surroundings.
Okay, wait. I want to challenge that non-living part for a second.
Sure, go for it.
Because, I understand how a bird and a tree are part of an ecosystem, right?
Mm-hmm.
But we're including the dirt, the sunlight. Like, how does a rock participate in a living community?
That's a great question. You have to think about the physical mechanics of a landscape. A rock doesn't just sit there doing nothing.
It doesn't.
No, it dictates how water flows across the ground. It absorbs heat from the sun and then radiates it at night.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, which creates these little microclimates for the insects living beneath it. And over centuries, that rock weathers and breaks down.
Which makes soil, right?
Exactly. It releases specific minerals into the soil that determine exactly which types of plants can even grow there in the first place.
So the non-living elements are essentially, they're like the operating system for the biology.
That's a perfect way to put it. They are entirely inseparable. The source text actually uses the analogy of a body.
Okay.
When you look at a forest, you shouldn't see the soil as just a stage that the trees happen to be standing on.
Right. It's not just a backdrop.
The soil, the air, the water, they are active, functioning organs of that forest.
Just like our organs.
Exactly. Your heart cannot function without the oxygen from your lungs. In that exact same way, the plants cannot function without the specific chemical cycling provided by the fungi in the soil.
Which in turn rely on the water, right?
Right. The moisture held by the terrain. It's all one body.
So if the ecosystem is a single interacting body, then it has to have a heartbeat. Something has to keep the blood pumping.
Yep.
And according to the text, that circulatory system is the flow of energy.
Specifically the flow of food. Who eats whom. But here we have to discard that neat, linear food chain model that most of us learned in school.
Oh, you mean the classic, sun grows grass, rabbit eats grass, fox eats rabbit model?
Yes, exactly that one. It's just far too simplistic.
Really?
Yeah. Energy does flow upward from the sun to the plants to the herbivores, but a real ecosystem doesn't operate in straight lines.
Because animals aren't that picky.
Right. That fox doesn't strictly eat rabbits. It eats beetles. It scavenges dead deer. It eats berries.
Oh, I didn't know foxes ate berries.
They do, and those rabbits are preyed upon by hawks, owls, and snakes. What you actually have isn't a chain, it's a sprawling, multi-directional food web.
A web.
Yeah, linking dozens, sometimes hundreds, of species together.
Okay, so if it's a dense web rather than a rigid metal chain, then removing one species isn't like, breaking a link where the rest of the necklace just falls off.
No, got it.
It's more like pulling a loose thread on a heavily knit sweater. You pull one thread, and you don't just lose that thread.
The whole thing snags?
Right. The tension changes, the fabric bunches up, and the entire shape of the garment gets totally distorted.
That is a really great analogy, and the scientific term for that snagged sweater effect is a trophic cascade.
Trophic cascade. Okay, break that down for us.
So trophic basically refers to the feeding and nutrition levels of an ecosystem.
Got it.
And a cascade happens when a change at one level of the food web, usually at the very top, triggers this massive chain reaction.
Like a domino effect.
Exactly. It ripples all the way down to the bottom, altering the plants, the soil, and sometimes even the geography itself.
Which sounds crazy, but the source provides this incredibly vivid case study of it. And honestly, the mechanics of it just blew my mind.
It's a classic example for a reason.
It's the story of Yellowstone National Park here in the U.S. and the wolves.
Right. So for decades, wolves had been completely eradicated from the park by human hunting. We basically pulled that top predator thread right out of the sweater.
And the immediate consequence was that the elk population just exploded.
Skyrocket.
But I'm assuming it's not just the sheer number of elk that caused the problem, right?
Yeah.
Like, did their behavior change because they weren't being hunted anymore?
That is the crucial mechanism here. Ecologists actually call it the ecology of fear.
The ecology of fear. I love that term.
It's fascinating. Without wolves, the elk were no longer afraid. They didn't have to keep moving around to avoid being ambushed.
So they just chilled out.
Pretty much. They could just stand leisurely along the riverbanks and in the valleys, just eating all day long.
Okay, so what exactly were they eating?
They were eating the young willow and aspen shoots that were trying to grow near the water.
So the elk essentially become like giant lawnmowers.
Giant lawnmowers, exactly.
Just cutting down the forest before it can even grow.
They stripped those riverbanks nearly bare. And this is where we see the biological directly impact the physical environment.
How so?
Because those young trees never grew, they never developed deep root systems.
Oh, let me guess. Without the roots holding the soil together, the riverbanks start to collapse.
Exactly. The roots act like rebar in concrete. Without them, erosion just completely takes over.
Wow.
The river started to widen, the banks collapsed, the water became shallower and a lot warmer.
Which I'm guessing is bad for whatever lives in the water.
Disastrous. That warmer water was terrible for the native fish and amphibians. The ecosystem was essentially bleeding out.
Just because the wolves were gone?
Just because the wolves were gone.
Okay, but then in the 1990s, the wolves were reintroduced to the park.
They were, and this is where we see the trophic cascade operate in reverse.
Fixing the sweater.
Right. The wolves immediately started bringing the elk numbers down. But more importantly, they reinstated that ecology of fear we talked about.
Right. The elk couldn't just stand around anymore.
Exactly. They stopped congregating lazily in the valleys and gorges where they could be easily trapped by the wolves.
So they moved to higher ground, which meant the riverbanks were suddenly left alone.
Yep. The willows and aspens could finally grow again. Within just a few years, trees along the rivers literally quintupled in height.
That's amazing.
The roots stabilized the soil. The erosion stopped. The rivers narrowed, the pools deepened, and the water cooled down.
Which brings the fish back.
Exactly, the fish came back. But the cascade didn't even stop there.
There's more.
Oh, yeah. With the trees back, songbirds returned to the canopies. And most importantly, the beavers came back.
Because beavers need wood to survive.
Right.
But wait, how does a beaver population physically alter the landscape on, like, a macro level? I know they build dams, but how does that cascade outward?
Well, a beaver dam physically alters the hydrology of a whole landscape. By blocking a rushing stream, they create these still ponds.
Okay.
And those ponds allow water to slowly seep down into the earth, which recharges the groundwater table.
Oh, wow. I didn't realize that.
Yeah, and the dams also create wetlands, which become these highly specialized habitats for ducks, moose, reptiles, amphibians.
It's just difficult to wrap my head around the scale of this.
It is wild.
Like, let me get this straight. Bringing back a single predator literally changed the physical shape and flow of the rivers themselves. That feels almost like magic.
It sounds like hyperbole, right?
Yeah.
But it is observable ecology.
Wow.
I do want to add a quick caveat here, though,
Sure, go ahead.
because scientists are always very careful to point out that the full Yellowstone story is incredibly complex.
Right, it's never just one thing.
Exactly. It wasn't the wolves acting in a total vacuum. Changing climate conditions, hunting policies outside the park borders, and the presence of other predators like grizzly bears, they all played a role.
So it's not quite as clean as the popular version of the story.
Right. But the core lesson absolutely holds true. The wolves were the undeniable trigger mechanism that allowed the cascade to happen.
That just proves that the organs of the ecosystem are entirely dependent on one another.
100%.
But, looking at this web, it seems clear that not every thread carries the exact same tension. Like, the loss of a single type of beetle might not collapse the riverbank, but the loss of the wolf absolutely did.
And this brings us to a foundational concept in ecology, which is the keystone species.
Keystone species.
Yeah, the term actually borrows from architecture. If you look at a classic stone archway, there is one wedge-shaped stone at the very top center.
Right, that's the keystone.
That is the keystone.
It's the stone that bears the pressure
Yeah.
of the two sides leaning against each other,
Yeah.
locking the whole structure into place.
Exactly.
If you pull it out, the arch turns into a pile of rocks.
And in an ecosystem, certain species play that exact same load-bearing role. A keystone species is defined as an organism whose impact on its environment is vastly disproportionate to its actual abundance.
Like the wolves. There weren't millions of wolves in Yellowstone, but their influence dictated the shape of the entire park.
Precisely.
Now, the source outlines a second real-world example of this, and it's one that I find fascinating because the animal seems so unassuming.
The sea otter.
Yes. The sea otter. I have a really hard time believing a creature that small, just bobbing around in the ocean, is dictating the survival of massive coastal ecosystems. What is the mechanism there?
To understand the otter, we have to look at its primary food source, which is the sea urchin.
Okay, those spiky little things?
Right, sea urchins are these spiky marine invertebrates, and they feed on kelp. And kelp forms these massive, towering underwater forests along the coastlines.
These kelp forests are basically the coral reefs of colder waters, right?
Very much so.
They provide the three-dimensional habitat for fish, crabs, seals, all of that.
They do, and they also physically slow down ocean currents and protect the coastlines from storm surges.
Oh, that's really important.
Yeah. Now, kelp doesn't have a traditional root system. It has what's called a holdfast, basically a structure that grips onto the rocky ocean floor.
Okay, so where do the urchins come in?
Sea urchins graze along the ocean floor, and they particularly love to eat those holdfasts. Yeah, but when otters are present, they dive down, grab the urchins, bring them to the surface, and crack them open. The otters keep the urchin population firmly in check, which allows the kelp forests to grow thick and lush.
So for conservationists, identifying these keystone species must be the ultimate leverage point, right?
Absolutely.
It's like finding the one load-bearing wall in a house.
Yeah.
You protect that and you save the whole building. But if you pull the otter thread out of the sweater,
The urchin population explodes,
Mhm.
and because there are no predators left, the urchins become incredibly aggressive grazers.
they just eat everything.
They sweep across the ocean floor in these massive herds, chewing right through the kelp holdfasts, and then the kelp is completely detached and just floats away to die.
They essentially log the entire underwater forest.
Down to bare rock.
Wow.
The resulting landscape is literally called an urchin barren. And once the kelp is gone, the fish lose their nursery grounds.
Which means the seals lose the fish.
Yep. The crabs disappear. The entire community collapses into a dead zone, all because a relatively small, unnumerous mammal was removed from the top of the arch.
It really is just like accidentally taking a sledgehammer to that load-bearing wall. The whole roof caves in.
And the terrifying part of ecology is that we often don't know which wall is load-bearing until we hear the wood start to splinter.
Which raises a massive question.
Okay, what's that?
If these systems are so volatile and the removal of a single species can cause a total collapse, how has nature survived for hundreds of millions of years?
That's a very fair point.
Right. I mean, the planet has faced ice ages, volcanic eruptions, meteor strikes. There has to be some underlying defense mechanism that prevents the web from just unspooling completely every time something goes wrong.
There is, and it's a term that totally dominates environmental discussions.
Biodiversity.
Biodiversity. Yeah, but rather than just using it as a buzzword, the text defines it functionally. Biodiversity refers to the sheer variety of life at every level.
So like the number of different species in a rainforest.
Yes, but also the genetic variance within a single population, and even the diversity of the ecosystems themselves across the globe.
But why does variety equal survival? If I have a machine with 10,000 parts, isn't it more likely to break down than a machine with just 10 parts?
Not if those parts are redundant.
Redundant?
Yeah, the mechanism behind biodiversity is functional redundancy.
Oh, I see where you're going with this. It's basically an insurance policy.
Exactly.
It's like having a sports team where everyone can play multiple positions.
Yes, that's a perfect way to look at it.
Right, so if one player gets injured, someone else covers the gap and you still win. But if you only have one goalie and they go down, the whole game is over.
That is exactly how it works. In a highly diverse ecosystem, you might have 10 different species of insects that pollinate a specific type of flower, or 5 different predators that keep the rodent population in check.
So if a disease wipes out one of those pollinators,
The system doesn't collapse.
because the other 9 species step up to fill that ecological niche.
Right, the web holds the tension.
So a biodiverse system is robust. It acts as a shock absorber.
Yes.
But a sparse system, one that's been stripped down to just a few species, is incredibly fragile.
Brittle is the perfect word for it. It can easily unravel. And this is where the abstract science slams into our everyday reality.
Our reality.
Yeah. When human activity paves over habitats, or sprays industrial pesticides, or drives species to extinction, we are systematically stripping the redundancy out of the natural world.
We're removing the backup layers.
Exactly.
We're taking a dense, resilient web and pulling out threads until it's just hanging by a single string.
And we have to remember, we are not outside of that web.
You're in it.
We are completely reliant on the body of nature functioning properly. I mean, we depend on these intact ecosystems to purify our drinking water,
Right.
to generate the oxygen we breathe, to pollinate the crops that feed billions of people.
And even to physically hold the topsoil on our farms so it doesn't just blow away in the wind. So this isn't just sentimentality for nature lovers. Extinction isn't just a tragedy for the specific animal that disappears.
No, not at all.
It is a direct mechanical threat to the infrastructure that keeps humanity alive. We are cutting strands out of the web that supports us.
Biodiversity is literally our life insurance policy against a changing planet. When an ecosystem is rich and complex, it can adapt to rising temperatures or droughts or new diseases.
But when it is simplified and brittle, it shatters under pressure.
Exactly.
The deep lesson here really forces a total perspective shift.
It humbles you.
It really does. Because in the living world, nothing stands alone. Every creature, from the mightiest apex predator hunting in the snow down to the invisible microscopic fungi dissolving minerals in the dirt, they are all locked into this vast machinery of survival.
They are all pulling on the exact same web. And protecting that web is how we prevent our own life support systems from unraveling. We really have to move past seeing nature as just this scenic backdrop for our lives.
Right, like a pretty painting.
Yeah. We have to recognize it as the engine we are currently sitting inside.
We started this deep dive by looking out the window at a bird, a flower, a fox. And the instinct is to see them as isolated items.
Yep.
But armed with the mechanics of ecosystems, trophic cascades, and keystone species, that view has to change. You don't just see the bird anymore.
You see the invisible threads.
Right. You see the threads tethering that bird to the insects it eats, which are tethered to the chemical composition of the soil, which is anchored by the roots of the trees, which is shaped by the flow of the water.
You see the living, breathing body of the environment.
Before we wrap up, I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over, something that builds on the mechanics we've unpacked today.
I love this part.
We've seen how historically humanity has acted as a totally disruptive force, right?
Yeah.
Pulling the top predators out, paving over the wetlands, just unraveling the sweater.
We are incredibly effective at breaking ecosystems.
Very effective.
Yeah.
But given our outsized influence on the planet, what might it look like if human beings actively tried to be a keystone species in our own local ecosystems?
Nurturing the web rather than just consuming it.
Exactly. If we have the power to cause a trophic cascade, we theoretically have the power to engineer one that heals the landscape. What if, Instead of just extracting resources, we actively used our intelligence to be that wedge-shaped stone that locks the web together.
It's a powerful thought.
How do we become the force that deepens the rivers and grows the forests, rather than the force that turns it all into a barren rock? Something to think about the next time you step outside and look at the dirt under your feet.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for taking this deep dive with us today. Keep looking out those windows, keep questioning how the machinery works, and we'll see you next time.